Our response, we will keep pressing. We will keep pushing, keep advancing. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. What you just heard is definitionally a war crime. Offering no quarter, no chance of surrender to an enemy combatant who no longer poses a threat is a violation of the laws of armed conflict. The U.S. is a signatory to the Hague Regulations of 1907 and the Geneva Conventions of 1949. The values expressed there regarding the treatment of prisoners and those attempting to surrender are reflected in our UCMJ and in the War Crimes Act of 1996. The DoD's Law of War Manual explicitly says, and I quote, "It is forbidden to declare that no quarter will be given." Pete Hegseth simply does not care. He has already proudly proclaimed that the U.S. military will not be bound by, quote, "stupid rules of engagement." What kind of signal do you think that sends to the American service member fighting right now? I'll tell you because I'm hearing from them. They're asking, are we still the good guys? We just blew up a girls' school in Iran, reportedly a double tap strike, and then lied about it. And that lie wasn't some junior press officer. It came directly from the President of the United States.
Did the United States bomb a girls' elementary school in southern Iran on the first day of the war and kill 175 people?
In my opinion, based on what I've seen, that was done by Iran.
Is that true, Mr. Hegseth? It was Iran who did that?
We're certainly investigating.
Still investigating.
But the only side that targets civilians is Iran.
We think it was done by Iran.
It wasn't Iran. There is definitive evidence of a Tomahawk missile, a U.S. weapon, hitting that site. At this point, we cannot believe anything the Trump regime says. We are being dragged into another war in the Middle East with no clear objective and no end in sight. I asked Paul Rieckhoff to join me to talk about all this. Paul founded Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America over 20 years ago and has spent the last 2 decades fighting for veterans and holding the U.S. government accountable. During our wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Paul was one of the most prominent critics of our policy failures there, and it feels like we're doing it all over again. Here's our conversation. Paul, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for fighting the good fight on CNN and everywhere else. But man, I feel like we have been in this movie before. You've literally been in this movie before with Matt Damon, and we know how it ends. We haven't learned a damn thing, it feels like, from Iraq, much less Afghanistan. What's your take?
Yeah, deja vu all over again, man. Here we are again, right? I mean, I think maybe I'll start with the opportunity here. You and I have been fighting in this space and on these fights and with guys like Pete Hegseth for over 20 years now, right? And all that was a warm-up for this. Yeah. This is the biggest game possible, and it is no game. But this is the highest stakes we've ever seen. And it all, in some ways, maybe steeled us, especially as activists and veterans and anyone else who works, try to make a positive impact. That steeled us for this moment, because this moment is so big. It is so out of control. It has so much overflow potential. It's going to hurt so many people, and it's going to require so many people. So, you got your Navy shirt on. I got my Army stuff behind us. We're going to have to be like fingers on a fist. We're all going to have to get together. And I've been saying this a lot, Ken. I think there's actually an opportunity here. There has never been anything, at least in the last couple of years, that's united Americans politically like their opposition for the Iran war. And that's big. 70% of people don't want this war. That's people like Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly and now Newt Gingrich, right? And it's obviously folks on the left and a lot of people in the independent space, in the middle space, and it comes on the backs of people's total disgust with ICE. Yeah. So you got 2 hugely unpopular things that are coming together, and maybe this is the moment that can kind of break the seal and bring us together as Americans on what should be the focal point, which is removing Donald Trump. He is the number one priority, and that has to be the priority for everybody.
Well, I suppose if the political system is still responsive to democratic input, right? And there are concerted efforts to undermine the democratic process. We'll get to those in another show, though, because I want to talk about Iran. And even though I've done over 400 episodes of this show talking about the incompetence of the administration, even I've been shocked. Even I have been appalled at the lack of preparation when it comes to filling the strategic petroleum reserves, the idea that, my God, the Straits of Hormuz might be mined. We rehearsed that 20 years ago when I was in the Navy. We've had 47 years to plan for this, and the most basic stuff seems to have fallen through the cracks. I mean, as appalled as, we have been in the lead up to this at the utter incompetence in every domain of Trump's administration, have you been as surprised as I have at just how incompetent the planning has been for this?
No. This is on brand. And failing to plan is planning to fail. But I also will warn people and bring attention to the fact that this is also the way they do business. This is a strategy. And what I would say is, I've said this a lot. Trump wants to go as far and as fast as he can before he dies. And he does not care about quality. He is going to run this ride until the wheels come off. And he knows he's not long for this world. He knows that J.D. Vance is not up for following his lead, and Pete Hegseth's not going to be carrying it. And also he doesn't care, because he only cares about himself and his own glory and power. So it's kind of like the rush to Baghdad when we went to Iraq, right? They want to blitz as fast and as far as they can to get Baghdad, knock out Saddam, capture weapons of mass destruction, and they don't leave their flank and their six covered. And that's the strategy, right? If you go all gas, no brakes, you don't ever have to slow down to look in your rearview mirror at the wreckage. You're never held accountable, and you can just keep going from Iran over to Cuba. You can hit Mexico. And I continue to say, Ken, on every show I can, the most important story in the world is Donald Trump can do anything he wants with the most powerful military the world has ever seen, and nothing is stopping him. So the question is not just what is his plan for Iran? The question for the Democrats especially is, what is your plan to stop him? Can you even stop him from putting boots on the ground? Can you defund the Department of Defense? They defunded DHS, which had an impact, right? They stopped it there. They shut down the government over healthcare. What are you going to do to stop caskets from coming home? And I say that because I'm an independent and I want to support a strategy. But I know Donald Trump's not going to have a clear plan. That is by design. It also ensures they can't be held accountable for one rationale if it doesn't work out. But what I'm looking for is the alternative strategy. Who are going to be the leaders who can say, okay, guys, Trump's all fucked up. Here's our plan. Here's our plan to stop Trump. And I think this is a moment, especially for Democrats, to rise and meet that and work together and sound like they're singing on the same song and also working off the same objectives.
It's Ken with a quick break to tell you about my Substack page, where you'll find bonus episodes and other exclusive content. And subscribing is a way to support this show directly without us having to rely on advertisers. For those of you who have signed up, thank you so much. It is growing harder and harder to rely on traditional media. Just look at what has happened over at CBS. So independent news is going to have to make up the gap. And if you believe in what we're trying to do here in the interviews and the commentary that this show brings you, please consider pitching in. It's free to sign up, and that itself is helpful because popular shows get recommended even more people. And if you're able to afford a paid subscription, they start at $8 a month. Every dollar goes back into what we're doing. Thanks for helping out. It feels like the president has come to the conclusion that the U.S. military is the only organ of government that can actually get him what he wants. The DOJ has failed him. Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are a constant embarrassment. DHS has failed him. Kristi Noem, another embarrassment, but the military delivers. Reportedly, he said, let's do this like we did Venezuela. I'm, I guess, reassured to hear that you are not surprised by the incompetence of this administration, but you've got to be surprised at the lack of pushback by the military. Like, where are the senior leaders saying this is a dumb idea?
I'm also not surprised there, Ken, because we've seen this before, right? I mean, look, it bears repeating. Iraq and Afghanistan went on for 2 decades. And I think we have to recognize that we were failed by a generation of military leaders. Guys like you and I were failed in Iraq and Afghanistan. And now a lot of these military leaders go on TV and talk about the next war when they fucked up the last war. It's not like places like Israel where there was, tremendous accountability for fucking up, right? For losing, right? And I think that is important because we've also created a professionalized military culture, which is to our general benefit, which keeps them out of politics, right? All these retired generals say, I don't want to get into politics, right? Well, this is the time to break glass. Okay. Because if you don't get into politics now, politics is going to get into you and take us into a very, very dangerous place. And this also, again, on plan, Ken, you got to, on some levels, I know it's hard for maybe your audience and folks on the left, especially, You got to respect the plan. You got to respect the enemy and know that this was the strategy. Get Hegseth through first. He is the most radical. He's a culture warrior. Once you seize the Pentagon, then everything else does become easy. Kash Patel was easy. Kristi Noem was easy. RFK Jr. was easy. And they grabbed this giant ship, right? Like a battleship. And they went and ripped the guts out of it, right? And turned it into the culture war machine that they wanted it to be. Now they're turning that ship on the world, right? They turned it on Venezuela. They turned it on 8 other countries. They're turning it on Iran. They're turning it inward, with ICE and the National Guard and American streets. So this has always been the plan because he knows that this is where he fucked up last time, right? General Milley stopped him. He had rational people like Secretary Esper who pushed back. All those guardrails are gone. So right now, the only real circuit breaker we may have, especially on things like whether or not he uses a nuke or whether or not he invokes the Insurrection Act, is Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane. Yeah. He is the circuit breaker, right? And that is really fucking terrifying, right? Yeah. But you know that that's the truth. There's going to be a moment where Hegseth says, yeah, fucking do it. And Trump says, I want to do it. And they look at Kane. And does Kane say, okay? Or does Kane say, no, sir, I'm putting my rank on the desk and it's either Hegseth or me. And I think that moment may come. If you see Hegseth gone, it's probably because he crossed Trump and got him into trouble or didn't align with him, but maybe also because he had to pick between Kane and Hegseth. And let's hope he picks Kane and he doesn't pick Hegseth, because if he picks Hegseth and replaces Kane, then nothing's stopping him.
Well, I don't know that that's reassuring either, because Kane's chief qualification, at least on being nominated, was wearing a MAGA hat to a Trump event as a 3-star, not a 4-star, and reportedly saying, I will kill for you, sir. And he hasn't denied that. So I think
that's important, man. I do think it's important, but I also think what we're seeing that's also very important is you've got this kind of balkanization of our military, right? And you know, we've all seen the movie Civil War, right? What kind of American are you? Yeah. But what you're seeing now is governors pushing back. And I think this is very important, as you know. Governors like Pritzker, governors especially like Westmore, our friend Westmore in Maryland, because they're also the commanders in chief of their National Guard. And that is one guardrail he hit. Like, he got pushed back in the courts. The court said you can't illegally send these National Guard troops and federalize them into places, in D.C. as an example. And those governors kind of held the line, but he also backed off. And then he went deeper with ICE. So I would urge people to watch. What Trump is doing is toggling. He's using different weapons for different targets. He pushed on Greenland. He got a lot of friction. He pulled back. He went to Venezuela. He got friction in Minneapolis. He pulled back there. He went deeper into Phoenix and into Portland, Maine. So overall, strategically, he is still pushing forward. But when he gets resistance on the battlefield, strategically, to some extent, they pull back, if only to make sure they can regain the narrative. They can snatch the microphone and dominate the conversation. The problem here is you can't dominate the conversation when war goes sideways and 13 countries are involved. Yeah. And this is the real challenge for him, is that they've lost the narrative. And the challenge for us is, even if Donald Trump was out tomorrow, this is still a giant fucking mess. He has unleashed the Kraken here now, and it's going all over the world. So we've also got to think not just about how to replace Donald Trump, but we're probably going to spend the next generation cleaning up his mess.
We are indeed. And I want to get to some of our listener questions. We got a ton of them for you, and I can probably only make time for a couple of them. But the biggest is, how is this different than what you went through in particular in Iraq? And I got to have you talk about enriched uranium. I mean, the weapons of mass destruction canard that led us to Iraq is actually real in Iran, and zero plan for that. As a pilot, I'm just reminding folks that air power has no answer when it comes to the kind of material that we need to secure in Iran. The only way to do that is with boots on the ground. What's your assessment?
First off, shout out to everybody in the mighty Meidas world. A lot of you have been very supportive of me and our work, and I just want to shout them out. And also, it's really important to have you, Ken, guiding these conversations. As you and I have talked about a lot, there are very few combat veterans who have shows. And I think if there was ever an important time for that to happen, is now. I mean, for a long time, the only person who had a show was Hegseth. And we see where that went, right? But how is this different? And this is, I think, the most important reason all of this is different. Trump is totally unrestrained. The world never accounted for a rogue American president. Every institution, the UN, NATO, it was all built by Americans, assuming that the American president would be a good guy. Even our Congress, right? So he has broken all those systems because the rogue president is ours. George Bush at least cared about public opinion. George Bush on some levels was accountable to a Congress. There was actually a vote, right? And most in the Senate voted for that war, right? So there was process. He tried to make a case to the world, right? There was a coalition in the beginning. There's none of that. So I think most importantly, the collateral damage is already potentially so much worse because of the region, because of the disruption to the economy, because of the threat, not just of the uranium in Iran, which is unsecured, we think. We don't know where it is. That's the most important question to ask them every time is where the fuck is the uranium, right? Especially if this is why we went there. Do you know where it is? Is it secure? But also keeping in mind, I had Joe Cirincione on my show about a week and a half ago, and he said 95% of the countries in the world with nukes have authoritarian leaders. That is a big risk. Now, that includes ours. That includes Netanyahu and Israel. That includes Pakistan, which has now declared war on Afghanistan. The entire region and the entire world is in a very volatile place where we can't trust leaders. And that's the difference here, right? The Iranian people are being asked to rise up against a regime that lies to them and kills them. And they're being asked to do it by an American president that lies to them and kills them. So what the fuck are they supposed to do? And I think that's the real quandary of where we are in the world is everybody's going to their corners, going to their bases. And the really important reason why this is different, Ken, is that we can't control things anymore. We are not in charge because of Trump, because of our isolation, because of how we've become so renegade. We don't have allies like we used to. Enemies are now, our friends, and our friends are enemies. Half of the people of Denmark think we're an adversary. The Canadians don't want to stand with us. So we are so isolated and it is so dangerous. And therefore it is so important for shows like yours, voices like ours, to offer to America and the world a counter narrative and saying Donald Trump does not speak for most Americans. Donald Trump is un-American. We are working like hell to get rid of him. We are working like hell to counter him. But please know there are people back here fighting who don't want to kill kids, who want to hold people accountable, who don't want unlawful wars, who don't want to kill Americans in the streets. He does not represent who most of us are. And we're working on taking that power back. But in the meantime, we got to snatch the mic back and talk to the world and let them know that we're not all fucking crazy like him.
We got to leave it there, Paul. Thanks for doing what you're doing on CNN and everywhere else. It's why Meidas goes to Greenland and to Denmark. It's why we carry that microphone we have as far as we can and talk to as many truth tellers as we can. Paul, appreciate you always. Thanks, man.
Thank you, man. If I can, everybody, we're on YouTube now as well. Follow Independent Americans. I'm bringing content every day to add light, to contrast the heat. And, I know folks want to win in November. We are organizing independent veterans to win where Democrats can't. There are a lot of places Democrats can't win, like Nebraska, Montana, South Dakota, Idaho. We are organizing independent veterans to run and stand for our Constitution, stand up to Trump, and offer another prong in this fight. 45% of this country is unaffiliated and independent. Only 27% are Democrats and Republicans. So we want to work together with anybody who stands for democracy and for the right things in this country and try to push back as much as we can. We need everybody's support. So thank you to you, especially. I hope Ken will run. Folks, maybe you can get Ken to run. What do you think, man? Can we get you to run?
No chance.
All right. Well, in the meantime, I got your back, man.
Links below, everyone. Thanks again, Paul. As always, let's have you back soon.
Thank you, everybody. Stay vigilant. Keep the faith.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.